by a unanimous vote of the University of Maine System Board of Trustees, the board has appointed former Governor Daniel Malloy as the next chancellor of the University of Maine System.
Chancellor Page for the unbelievable work he has done. Many thanks to Chair Irwin and Trustees Martin and Collins and the entire Board of Trustees for the opportunity that they've allowed me to have to serve Maine and its students. I am honored to have the chance to build on the progress that has already been made here in Maine and look forward to working with all of you. Let me pay you a compliment. Education is a calling. It's one of the few areas in life, fields of endeavor, in which you are guaranteed to make transitional change. The idea of education is that you're not only affecting the young man or the young woman or middle-aged man or middle-aged woman in the educative process, but you're actually changing permanently the projection of that family for generations to come. Degrees had in one area, in one time frame, will carry forward, lifting families up in income and further family educational opportunities exercised here in the state of Maine. If no one else has said it to you yet today, thank you for accepting that calling, for being educators in the state of Maine, and for making sure that this state will continue to be and reach even further success in the future. I also want to thank all of you who are here, and we've interrupted this conference, that you accepted the opportunity to come and talk about Title IX. It is essential. Our commitment to provide fair treatment and access to education free of discrimination or harassment is fundamental in what we do. And welcome to students and faculty who are watching these proceedings on TV. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, my first day as the designate directly. Public higher education in Maine has come a long way under the leadership of the board and Jim Page. 7 years ago, the system was operating on a non-sustainable basis, and people knew it, but were afraid to do something about it. Tuition had gone up 400% in the preceding 25 years. Enrollment was in the midst of a 13-year decline, and campuses were facing multi-million-dollar shortfalls, and students were actually marching on board meetings. The one thing everyone agreed on, more than 80% of the respondents to the Bangor Daily News survey said that at the time, closing the Bangor headquarters for the system was a smart move to make. Now, 5 years into Jim Page's One University initiative, and Maine has become a national laboratory for higher education reform and a national leader in affordability. 6 years of tuition freezes and a 40% increase in grants and scholarship made it possible to completely cover tuition and fees for 1 in 4 Maine students this spring. And a regional leader in enrollment growth as well is Maine. At 2.4%, Maine leads New England four-year public institutions for expanding opportunities to your citizens. And Maine is also a leader in addressing some of the state's biggest demographic and workforce challenges as well. Nursing, as has been, and by the way, my mother was a nurse, has been referenced previously. Half of the nurses currently in practice in Maine and Maine's rural coastal counties are 55 years or older and approaching retirement. The University of Maine is bringing nursing to Brunswick, Rockland, Rumford, Ellsworth, this fall to make sure that Maine communities can educate their own healthcare professionals. And next January, UMaine will bring nursing to Machias as well. As we have heard today, it is no surprise that the board is so intent on continuing the momentum achieved at Maine's public universities under Jim Page. So I am honored and eager to have the chance to continue the progress of such a visionary leader and be dedicated myself to the success of Maine as a public servant. My mother instilled in me on a daily basis that we shared this earth together, that I had an obligation to leave the world a better place for my having lived in it. I was drawn to electoral politics not for the winning and the losing, but for being able to do things, to serve people, and to have accomplishments on behalf of people. In Connecticut, we put together a great team and made progress on tough issues that a lot of my predecessors had, quite frankly, avoided. We paid off many of the debts of prior administrations and kept for the first time our promise to properly fund pensions, first time in our history. We worked with our partners in state bargaining units to reach agreements that ultimately saved somewhere between $40 and $45 billion. We put money away for rainy days, invested in the technologies that made government better and more efficient, and we reduced the size of state government, executive state government, by 13%. It was not easy. It was not always popular, but it was a job to be gotten done. They were goals that needed to be reached. But I should also tell you that we created well over 100,000 private sector jobs, and that we ended one of only 2 states to end chronic homelessness in the United States. That doesn't mean that someone will not become homeless, but it means that there is a way back from that homelessness. We reduced violent crime to 50-year lows, and we reduced recidivism of those individuals coming out of prison. We closed prisons. We took some of that money and invested it in education for previous prisoners as well. We invested in transportation. We created new and preserved other housing units totaling in excess of 24,000 units. And we built strong partnerships with our employers. And we prioritized public higher education, establishing, as has previously been said, the Regent system, bringing 17 community colleges and state universities together to improve services and to allow for savings. We secured more funding for our flagship university, the University of Connecticut. 2 projects alone totaling $2.3 billion in bioscience and engineering. We increased the size of our engineering program by 70%. And we did that in 4 years. We built stronger connections to our employers, adding advanced manufacturing centers to prepare a more highly skilled workforce, and we increased apprenticeships by 40%. Connecticut today leads the nation in the percentage of individuals in apprenticeships of all 50 states. Stats like that have a lot of people concerned that stats like that mean that we can get things done here working together in Maine as well. Some of those same subject matters are what Maine citizens are talking about today. Those measures are not always easy to do, but they must be accomplished on behalf of the people we serve. Now, it is tougher to define metrics for scholarship, but we must never forget that teaching, learning, and discovery are fundamental values of education. The pedagogy may change, credentials and assessments will evolve, but it will always be a noble and necessary to enlighten civilized society, because that society simply cannot continue to exist if we don't do that job. And let me give a shout out for liberal education, not in the political sense, but making sure that we're sending forth citizens who are prepared to live in and make stronger the communities that they join. I have worked hard as a governor for the last 8 years, and I have worked as mayor for 14 years before that. My time in electoral politics is over, but my dedication to honoring the promise I made to my mother, that I would live my life in such a way that I would have an impact for the benefit of my fellow citizens, will now be shared with the state of Maine. I couldn't be happier than to be joining you. Now, there is one other gigantic job we have to do. In the coming years, we need another 158,000 credentialed future employees. We need to produce those employees for this state. It is a monumental task, but one that we are ready to engage in and to accomplish. If we see that mission completed, Maine will be stronger. Maine will be better for our citizens. Our economy itself will be stronger. Let us not be afraid to make the changes necessary to allow us to accomplish that goal. We owe it to the state that has given us so much, including the challenge to educate its young people. Thank you for this opportunity.